Chapter 9. The Universal Manifestation Theory. The idea that everything in the universe is interconnected is known as quantum entanglement, or spooky action at a distance. This theory was first introduced by Albert Einstein, along with Boris Podolsky and Nathan Rosen, in the year 1935. They proposed that if two quantum particles interact with each other in a certain way, the properties of one particle are immediately influenced by the interaction of the other particle, regardless of the distance between them. This means that if you split a quantum particle, the properties of both particles remain entangled with each other, no matter how far apart they are. Moreover, both particles often move in opposite directions and behave in opposite ways after they are separated. This seems to be in direct contradiction to classical physics, in which particles can only communicate using signals that cannot travel faster than the speed of light. However, there is evidence for these phenomena. This implies that everything in the entire universe is interconnected because all energy in the universe follows the same universal laws, adheres to the same universal principles, is structured in the same way, and everything is made of the same source of energy, known as energy itself, also referred to as star stuff, particles from the Big Bang, and that's also what we are. Einstein was never satisfied with this theory because he believed it was in conflict with the theory of relativity, which states that nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. In fact, he referred to quantum entanglement as spooky action, or communication, at a distance, because it conflicted with his intuitive ideas about how the universe should work. Since then, a lot of research has been conducted on quantum entanglement, and experiments have demonstrated that it indeed exists and can be used for various intriguing applications, such as quantum cryptography and quantum computers. This is already accepted by mainstream science. This is a fact. Therefore, all the principles, universal laws, characteristics, and structure of the entire universe are also encoded within every cell of the human body because we are just another piece of the giant puzzle. This means that everything around us, both physical and non-physical entities, including ourselves and our minds, are part of this perfectly balanced structure. When we open our eyes and look at this bigger picture, it's easy to see two opposing forms of energy everywhere around us, even in the smallest forms of energy, such as positive or negative thoughts, good or bad emotions, life and death itself, warmth and cold, health and illness, wakefulness and sleep, night and day, success and failure, and so on. Just as particles are part of the whole, everything can still be split into two new opposing forms of energy, even if it's already divided. To have the whole exist, the opposite must also exist. To be or not to be. Shakespeare. But it's not just physical objects in our universe that are part of this balanced structure. Our consciousness, our human mind, our judgments, our emotional fluctuations, and so on. Just like every cycle on Earth or in space, every season, every mode of thinking, human behavior, human heart, human health, simply every aspect of life contains a piece of the source. All these elements are parts of the same source code, all reflecting the balance of life. It sounds strange when we say that every particle in the universe can be split into two opposing forms of energy that then act oppositely, and both particles then exhibit the same characteristics as those of the whole and act oppositely. But we simply cannot ignore that this phenomenon exists. The issue is that mainstream science has accepted Einstein's theory, while no one seemed to realize that these mysterious phenomena could be related to all the particles that make up the human body, including the energy we call emotions, beliefs, desires, and so on. The behavior of both particles is what Einstein referred to as spooky action at a distance. What if this behavior forms the basis of the balance of life? As long as something exists, it can be divided. But what happens when we create something new using our thoughts and visualization? The real questions we need to ask are, when we create something new, do we also create the opposite? When we pursue success, do we also bring failures into our lives? When we make plans for positive outcomes, at what point will these positive outcomes occur? Must something go wrong first before we can succeed? When we ask these kinds of questions, the answers are not far away. The human body is also a form of energy, and is not fundamentally structured differently from all other energies in the universe. Our bodies simply look different from our perspective. In reality, All cells of the human body, including our thoughts and emotions, are part of the same energy, part of the same universal source that we need to continue focusing on. As humans, we seem to possess the same power and capability as nature itself, but in a different form. Life itself creates things, whether it's flowers or trees. Life follows its own process. But as humans, we also have the incredible power to create entirely new things in physical reality out of nothing. Think about having children. Isn't that as miraculous as what nature does? When we plant an apple tree in the ground, aren't we responsible for the existence of that specific tree that will grow? If we hadn't decided to plant that tree, the seed would have ended up somewhere else, and that particular tree would not have existed in the future. When we draw a picture on a piece of paper, that drawing didn't exist in the universe before we created it. So, we create new things with our minds simply by deciding to do so. But do we also create an opposing form of energy, just as life balances everything? It would be naive to think that humanity is an exception because nature doesn't make mistakes. Why wouldn't certain universal principles affect us? As someone else might argue, it could be considered egotism or ignorance because Earth is just a drop in the ocean. I never understand why some people can be so arrogant and influenced by society to the point where they can't even see the real facts, even when the evidence is right in front of their eyes. If everything in the universe is already divided, it means that everything has an opposite, and new things cannot be created without the creation of the opposite. The opposite simply must exist. The balance of life, the yin and yang that old people talked about, is finally becoming clear. We are beginning to understand it. As long as something exists, there is an opposite. When something new is created, the opposite is also created. There are always two opposing forms of energy, both containing characteristics of the whole, without exception. How long can we keep dividing something before there's nothing left? The answer is, that's impossible. As long as something exists, it's susceptible to further division. Once we understand this, we can move forward. In fact, it's quite simple. If we all take a moment to look around us, we realize that everything in life has an opposite, even if we haven't paid attention to it before. If this theory proves to be correct, and if mainstream science confirms it, we can call this universal principle the universal law of creation. It not only explains how our thoughts shape reality, but also sheds light on the fundamental structure of the entire universe. Everything in life already has an opposite. What's created new will also have an opposite. Impens. Chapter 10. Driving Forces. We can clearly observe forces in the universe, forces that cause two opposing forms of energy to meet again at a certain point in time. I referred to these forces as driving forces because they essentially determine how the two opposing forms of energy will reunite after having been separated, and whether they will meet again at a specific point in time. An example of such a force is gravity, which, for instance, causes planets to orbit the sun and creates a cycle or pattern. While most of us think of a cycle as static, it's not the case in reality. Although a driving force creates a clear pattern or cycle, it doesn't mean that the pattern or cycle can't be disrupted by other forces, a greater force, or a larger element intervening. A cycle or pattern can change shape when a greater force comes into play, just like the trajectory of an asteroid changes when it comes close to a planet. If humanity is responsible for an oil spill in the ocean, it's humanity that disrupts the natural cycle of life in the ocean, at least until it's restored. Interfering forces can alter things in shape or direction, but they can also lead to things being permanently destroyed or spoiled. This is significant because humanity also has a driving force and a form of energy that can interfere when we talk about creating new things in life through our thoughts. Our belief is a driving force, the belief in a thought. A second thought that replaces a first thought can be seen as interference. For example, a volcano has a cycle of eruptions every few years, but this cycle can still change shape, such as when a major earthquake occurs, a powerful interference that can easily make the volcano erupt earlier than planned. At that point, the cycle isn't completed and stops. Life then decides whether the cycle stops completely or simply starts again. This complex phenomenon of interfering forces, this aspect of life, makes this theory somewhat more intricate, but will be explained in detail. It boils down to being as simple as having a second thought after being convinced of a first thought. All individual opposites eventually return to a state of unity, and most often they do so repeatedly. These cycles are visible everywhere throughout the universe, and all we need to do is pay attention to this balanced structure. Every cycle of every physical object in our universe can be observed if we simply open our eyes and analyze it. Every form of energy has an opposite, similar to matter and antimatter, and just like the positive and negative magnetic poles of the Earth. Another theory discussed by many scientists around the world is the Big Crunch. According to this new theory, it could also be a fact. The universe will eventually return to its original state, the state before the Big Bang. Even though the universe is currently still expanding, it will ultimately contract. Nothing in the universe remains the same. Everything follows a cycle and can be seen as a wave moving up and down, in and out, backward and forward. When two opposing forms of energy meet again after being separated, when they merge into one whole, that's when an event, a reaction, or an experience occurs. It marks the end of a cycle. The following examples share two fascinating characteristics. We can clearly see the effect of cycles, and we can observe that there is always a significant event at the end of a cycle. The buildup of energy and the release of pressure in a volcanic eruption. The interaction of warm and cold air currents creating tornadoes. The dynamics during sexual intercourse. Emotional fluctuations going up and down until a moment of depression or relief. Periods of war followed by times of peace. Inhalation and exhalation. Pole shifts, the cycle of life and death itself. Leaves growing and falling. The increasing power of solar flares and the subsequent energy release. The formation of steam. Electric charge through motion. The rise and fall of ice ages, the rise and fall of empires, lunar cycles, and so on. The balance of life and the cycles are always present, similar to day and night and the rotation of the Earth, which creates two balanced sides with similar weather patterns and geographic similarities. There is always a significant event at the end of a cycle after reaching a kind of energy peak. When we observe the motion of two opposing forms of energy, actually the behavior of all energy in the universe, we notice that they continually increase in strength. The only way to break this cycle is through the intervention of a greater force. Everything in life aims for growth, expansion, or evolution, just as we do. Until the moment a cycle is completed, the two opposing forms of energy continue to increase in strength. This movement only stops when the special moment, or the event, occurs unless it is interrupted. These events are moments in time when some kind of shift takes place. This shift occurs when a cycle is completed, and happens only when the energy of both opposing forms of energy has built up to the maximum, to the point where the energy of the movement of both opposites can no longer be increased. This is what I call the event, the moment of the shift, the experience, the visible reaction, or invisible to the human eye, the point of awareness, the manifestation of a thought, the creation of the whole, the energy release, the result, the end product, the unity, the combination of positive and negative energy, the awakening, the confrontation, and so on. The movement of both opposites, followed by an event, can reveal to us the true life cycle, the true creative process, and the true structure of the universe. Some examples may make this less complex. When a person's fear of failure and desire for success reach their peak levels almost simultaneously, for example just before the results of a test are announced, the event occurs. At this moment, when the greatest doubt and excitement are experienced almost simultaneously, the accumulated energy is released, precisely when the person receives the test results. Two opposing emotions have been created when the person thought about the test results, and these emotions increased in intensity, leading up to the moment of finding out the result. The only remaining question is what the result will be. How can we know what to expect when we have experienced both emotional states? This is precisely what this theory will further explain. People can explode in extreme anger when they have been bullied, ignored, or abused by others for an extended period. While going through such struggles in life, new thoughts and beliefs emerge. Such thoughts always evoke two opposing emotions, in this case, anger and love, the desire for or love of people who treat each other well. Both emotions intensify as thoughts or judgments are formed until the moment of energy release occurs. This event or energy release occurs when a person can no longer tolerate the negative emotions, while at the same time, the desire for change also reaches its peak. This is the moment when the person is too desperate and too fearful to remain silent, while at the same time, the desire for change also reaches an energy peak. When both extremes are reached, and the last emotional struggle can no longer be contained in the human body, that's when the original thought is replaced by an experience. That's when Pandora's box is opened. This form of energy release can be likened to what happens in the world around us. We just need to look at people's behavior during protests or revolutions. While some may be hesitant to discuss this topic, we may possibly find one of the best examples by looking at the movement of people during sexual intercourse. Not only the movement during sexual intercourse leading to an emotional event, but also the buildup of energy before people engage in sex. The temptation, desire, tension, attraction, rejection, all these factors contribute to the buildup of energy toward a brief moment of satisfaction, toward an experience. This form of movement can easily be compared to the movement required to create an electrical charge or to make fire with a wooden stick. First, there's a movement that goes on and off. Then a reaction follows. When we stop increasing the energy, no event occurs. Chapter 11. Theory Summary. This theory posits that humans possess the divine power of creation and are no different from everything else in the universe. Our thoughts have the power to create events, which is the manifestation of thoughts. The theory explains that every thought generates not one, but two emotions, two opposite emotions. These emotions are both created at some point between a thought and its realization to maintain balance in life. One emotion cannot exist without the other. The language we are born with, according to this theory, is a language of emotions, not of spoken words, and certainly not of written language. Our ability to speak serves only to describe or express our emotional states so that others can understand us. However, some emotions cannot be adequately expressed with words, such as the maternal feeling. The theory asserts that humanity is not aware of this language of emotions because we are not taught to pay attention to it. We are only taught to pay attention to spoken and written words, while not being sufficiently aware of how we feel. This has led to forgetting our emotional roots, even as animals are more instinctive and sensitive to danger. According to the theory, the emotional state created by a thought is expressed when the emotional power of both opposite emotions can no longer increase. At that moment, the two opposites collide and create an event, which is the manifestation of the original thought. What remains after the event is the experience, which contains the desired or invoked emotion of the thought. The theory also posits that the emotion created by a thought determines the outcome of the event. Automatically, the opposite emotion is also generated over time, as a counterpart to the emotion behind the original thought. For example, if the emotion behind the original thought is happiness, sadness is also created before the event takes place. The theory suggests that when thoughts or spoken words do not align with inner emotions, for example, when someone acts out of ego or when there is deception, the resulting event can eventually have negative consequences. While these negative consequences may not occur immediately, they can manifest over time. This theory can also help understand the concept of karma and how it operates in reality. Life constantly reflects our inner emotions and thoughts, and what we give to others ultimately comes back to us. Life cannot be deceived, and we always receive in accordance with what we give. Belief is the driving force that causes our thoughts to manifest in our physical reality. It is the power that brings together the two opposites, which increase in strength to the point of creation, to the moment when a thought becomes reality. When we change our belief in a thought during the manifestation process, while the energy of both emotions continues to increase, the process stops because a new thought is created. When we let go of our belief in a thought, the new thought automatically creates a new belief. This new thought also triggers two opposite emotions. For example, a person says the following while facing difficulties in achieving something: "I give up. I've tried everything." In this case, a new negative thought is created, and the belief in the original thought, "I can do it," is completely released. This means that this second thought is based on negative energy, and the new primary emotion is disappointment. This new thought replaces the first thought, and the old belief disappears as a new belief takes its place. The two new emotions created by the second thought now lead to a negative event, even if the person still experiences some positive emotions related to the negative event due to shifts in emotions that occur during this process. This is how people get trapped in a downward spiral of depression and unhappiness. Belief can disrupt and change a person's entire reality because it is responsible for all thoughts that manifest in our reality. It can make the desire disappear, disrupt someone's dreams, and literally throw everything into chaos while we try to achieve something. But on the other hand, if belief is maintained, we can achieve anything we desire. The universe encourages us to be ourselves, to strive for who we truly are, to pursue our deepest desires and dreams. These words have been said millions of times. Believe in yourself and believe in what you do will manifest the things you desire, while doubt or negativity can take everything away from you. The cessation of belief should only happen if it is for the well-being of the individual. The cessation of belief creates new thoughts, new emotions, and thus new events and experiences. We can create anything we want if we can maintain our original belief in a thought without deceiving ourselves. Our free will can only be taken away by the interfering power of manipulation or hypnosis. In every other case, we can literally create our own happiness if we are willing to experience the opposite. A person wouldn't know what feeling safe feels like if they've never experienced what it's like to be in danger. Similarly, a person wouldn't know what being happy feels like if they've never experienced sadness. We couldn't define these feelings without a comparison between both extremes on the emotional spectrum. Second thoughts only have an effect when the emotion created by the second thought is stronger than the emotion invoked by the first thought. This is belief at work from the subconscious. We have the ability to say, "That won't work," after we've initially said, "It will be fine." And we can do this if only a small amount of energy is put into that second thought. Our subconscious ensures that we retain the original belief in our first thought. It views this second thought as a quick thought, a simple expression of spoken or unspoken words. These quick words are almost disregarded by us, but only if the emotion behind these words is not stronger than the emotion invoked by the first thought. Our subconscious considers a quick thought as part of the creation process, the process toward the manifestation of a thought, as part of the change in emotions. This is a journey full of desired and undesired emotions, ups and downs, leading to a physical manifestation of a thought in reality. It's only when a second thought creates a new, stronger belief than the belief of the first thought that the first thought will not be manifested in reality. If you don't fully understand this part, read it again until you do, as it can explain why we're able to attract small things into our lives but not the big things. Just as we're able to manifest a cup of coffee into our lives but not our dream car. Even though they are both just energy, part of everything there is, part of the same structure as us, part of the universe. But what if we see these physical objects as something big or impossible to attain? Doesn't that mean we just have a perception problem based on what we've been taught? Our beliefs shouldn't have boundaries, especially not based on what other people want you to believe. Every person who has fulfilled their dreams knew they had to stop listening to what others were trying to convince them of. What is an absolute truth in one person's mind shouldn't be a truth in the minds of all people, but the opinions of others can be useful to open our eyes or to give us new ideas and insights into what is real and what isn't. Believing in something is part of our free will. The emotion that arises from a thought can also be an emotion that is barely noticeable or not felt at all. For example, if someone thinks, "I'm going to buy a coffee," that person probably won't start laughing and shouting with joy because they're happy to get their coffee. But there will still be a certain, albeit subtle, emotion invoked. In this case, the person going to buy coffee will experience two opposing emotions before getting their coffee, namely, the emotion of enjoying a cup of coffee and the emotion of missing or craving a cup of coffee. However, this person can also feel entirely different emotions. For example, if they insist on getting their coffee at 2 p.m., then their emotions might be more intense, such as the emotion of, "I really love my daily coffee," and the emotion of, "Why do I have to wait so long for my coffee?" Regardless, the two balanced emotions are always there, however small they may be. even if they are not consciously felt. It can often be frustrating that our most beautiful thoughts and emotions also trigger our darkest emotions, and our biggest dreams can summon our worst nightmares. It seems like we have to confront our demons before our dreams can come true, to bring them to life. Always remember this because they will inevitably surface during the manifestation process of a dream. It also doesn't matter whether someone is thinking about the past or the future, as long as we're talking about emotions created by our thoughts. The manifestation of a thought has nothing to do with time and has absolutely nothing to do with physical objects we desire. It's about the emotional state attracted by a thought, the experience of emotions, the feeling of different emotional states in different intensities, always depending on the desired emotion created by the thought. All we, as humans, can do is attach an emotion label to certain objects and experiences so that our minds, for example, know that the emotion of joy accompanies funny videos or hearing a 2-year-old talking. We choose these labels ourselves. No one can do it on our behalf. We label our personal emotions, and we all do it for ourselves. For example, not everyone will assign the emotion of fear to video footage of war, while others might. Emotional states were the same thousands of years ago, and will be the same tomorrow. It's all about emotional frequencies. We define our emotions based on our past experiences, our thoughts, judgments, and so on. Our subconscious knows which thought or experience elicits which emotion in us. For instance, if someone loves French fries, their mind knows which thought and emotion are associated with it. This person has linked delightful to the thought of French fries. Someone else might not experience the same emotional state when thinking about that type of food. We have control over our emotions. Life, or our subconscious, always bends time and space towards the manifestation of a thought, but it also looks at all our previous thoughts. This phenomenon is something many people struggle with, especially those who have tried to use the law of attraction to attract the things they wanted. It's an issue that was never mentioned in the original theory of the law of attraction. It may seem unfair, but that's only because of our perception. Life will always ensure that a person experiences the things they've requested with their thoughts, unless the belief in that thought is released. It's good to know that old beliefs fade away when new beliefs are created, but forgotten beliefs or old judgments we formed in the past persist as long as no new belief is created by a new thought. Chapter 12. Intention and Attraction. Intention is not responsible for creating events or experiences in our lives. This is what emotions do while we believe in a particular thought. Intent is there only to help us choose the right thoughts along the way. This intention is supported by our human instinct and intuition, and can also be influenced by our previous experiences or by ideas and manipulation from others. There is a time period between a thought and the manifestation of that thought that allows us to experience both opposing emotions. The positive and negative emotion created by the thought. The emotional shifts that occur during this period are perfectly normal. However, as humans, we often perceive them as random experiences because we are not aware of the principle of balance. We are not aware of both emotions that need to appear one by one, leading to the manifestation of a thought as they increase in intensity. If we don't see this balanced structure, this bigger picture, then it's normal for us to perceive everything as random events, or that some things happen by chance. But in reality, negative experiences are necessary if a person wants to have joyful experiences. When a person thinks, an emotion is immediately created. Later, the opposite of that emotion will also appear in that person's life. The speed of emotional shifts between these two opposing emotional states depends on the amount of time between the thought and the manifestation of that thought. The strength of both opposing emotional states depends on the intensity of the emotion created by the thought. Both emotions will increase in intensity and create an up and down emotional effect toward the manifestation of a thought. Both emotions cannot be felt at the same time during this manifestation process. Therefore, they appear one by one and fade away, going on and off, in a cycle towards the manifestation of a thought. The emotions grow stronger until the event occurs. Time is not so important because it is life itself that will determine when the time is right to manifest an experience. That's the perfection of life, and we can't tamper with it. For example, if a person wants to become a millionaire but also wants to be a talented piano player, life, our subconscious, or some would call it God, may know that this person will never play the piano again if they become a millionaire first. So, it's important to set our priorities, or else it may seem like life is deceiving us when it's actually doing everything perfectly.